So next we'll welcome Tim Dyke up to introduce our next reader, Craig. Yeah, read that.
Introduction to Craig Reinbold, a braided essay. Craig Reinbold hates braided essays. Craig Reinbold climbs gigantic rocks for fun. Craig Reinbold makes his own beer. Craig Reinbold once told me that the best way to work through awkwardness is to pretend there is no awkwardness. Craig Reinbold collected absence in Andrew's collection class. Craig Reinbold writes about Brandon Tina, the transgendered kid whose life and murder was depicted in the movie Boys Don't Cry. Craig Reinbold interviews soldiers. Craig Reinbold surfs the synthetic waves at Biosphere 2. Craig Reinbold writes about life and death and plants and love and human folly. Craig Reinbold gets me thinking about how writing is a collecting of absence, a way of finding some way to make use of loss. Craig Reinbold camps. Craig Reinbold is married to Angie, who deserves her own braided essay. Craig Reinbold may actually have written Angie a braided essay. Craig Reinbold was the first UA classmate I ever met, and I can always count on him for a good conversation about writing. Craig Reinbold takes everything seriously but himself, and then as soon as I say that, I feel compelled to say that of course Craig takes himself seriously, and of course Craig doesn't take things too seriously, but what I mean is that he is profound somehow, and his profundity is low-key and unpretentious. Craig Reinbold is a writer I look forward to reading for the rest of my life. Craig Reinbold is my friend, and he's reading tonight at WIP. Craig Reinbold once told me that he was anti-braid. Craig Reinbold is pro-large backpack. Craig Reinbold is too smart and too interesting and too nice and funny and good-looking to be known primarily for the size of his backpack. But that is one of the strange things about life. Sometimes we are known for the things we carry, and other times we are known for the things we carry things in. Craig Reinbold would recognize this John DeGata line. He's the camera, I'm the pose. In this photograph, I am happy. Craig Reinbold hates braided essays because Craig is a braided essay. He flows, he weaves, he connects, he binds things together. Craig Reinbold reads John DeGata, David Foster Wallace, Annie Dillard, Michael Perry. Craig Reinbold reads his own work to us now, and we are lucky because we get to hear it. Craig Reinbold has good hair. Please welcome Craig Reinbold.
The other day, I think I asked Tim how drunk I could appropriately get before I read, and Tim said, pretty drunk.
Are you pretty drunk?
I'm hoping it'll slow me down. I do have a large backpack. So I workshopped this morning, and my one goal was to come away with a good title. And everybody agreed my title was terrible, but nobody could give me a good title.
I'm getting signals.
Okay, thanks. So this crappy title is not my fault. It's the workshop's fault. Corey. Mostly it's Corey's. All right, so it's called Amazed by Pelicans. I should be playing for Corey. All right, slow. When I was 20, I fled Milwaukee with 3 friends on a mission to swim in the Pacific. It was a one-way trip of 36 highway hours, and during the drive I attempted to explain, unsuccessfully, my desire to someday experience fish. An idea rooted, soundly no doubt, in Sartre's philosophy of authenticity, but originally spawned, I admit, by a great sex scene in David Gutterson's novel Snow Falling on Cedars. It's been a while, but the way I remember this scene, the scene was a flashback. The deceased fisherman's wife was recounting her husband's return home from a long day at sea, discarding his tattered, and I'm sure very manly wool sweater, his jeans, everything, and steaming up the bathroom with him, the two of them sharing the hot shower together. I recall him scraping fish scales off his skin, and, this is key, pumicing the calluses on his hands, so he could caress her without scratching. So thoughtful was he. He was also a huge, strong man, apparently, And the shower scene ended with him palming her backside, lifting her up, and setting her down onto his, described earlier in a post-mortem autopsy scene as massive manhood. It seemed to me his was a pretty good life, until his skull was later crushed in a boating accident. But this was the life of a fisherman, as I imagined it. A small town on a bay, a well-worn pair of wellies, the gentle list of a boat, sipping thermos coffee before dawn, the smell of salmon on my hands and in my hair, mending nets, which seems enjoyable to me, scrubbing myself clean in the shower, pumicing the calluses on my palms before making love to my wife. A life cold and wet and smelly, yes, but also visceral and sexy. All of this is based in fiction, of course, but whatever. I wanted to experience all of that. Of course, my friends and I were stuck in the car forever, and they were having absolutely none of this. Sick as they were of my moping, and sick as they were of Joni Mitchell's Blue, my recent ex's favorite album, which I played on repeat during the entire I-90 stretch through South Dakota. And sick as they were of my pointing out all of the attractive couples we came across, fixating on the great sex I was sure they were having without me. Along the way, I was told several dozen times to shut the hell up about experiencing fish. And as a little aside, they still make fun of me. Just make fun of me. God damn it. One too many. They still make fun of me for this, because it's ridiculous. That trip was a rough few days for all of us, but still, I was definitely onto something, which I still maintain. They make fun of me, but I'm onto something. At 30, I was introduced to the work of Adrienne Rich in her poem Diving into the Wreck. I came to explore the wreck, the thing I came for, the wreck and not the story of the wreck, the thing itself and not the myth. Written 40 years ago, I think Rich here, too, was onto something. But I want to stress, the thing isn't always as literal, as tangible and as easy to locate as a wreck. It isn't always to be found in the form we expect. We go looking for fish, and not the story of fish. We go looking for love, and not the myth of love. For friendship, and not the trope of friendship. But this pursuit isn't always as simple as securing a place on a trawler, or going through the motions of a relationship, or careening off on a road trip across the country. The thing we seek is elusive, maybe more so for our constantly hunting it down. And yet, so often, the thing finds us, arrives when we least expect it. And sometimes this thing is there all along, no diving required, but we struggle to recognize it for what it is, because we were expecting it to look like something else. My friends and I cruised straight through San Francisco, finally landing at Pier 39. I'd never seen the Pacific before, and never been west of Iowa before, and after suffering so much time in the car, it was a shock to the system just to be up and walking, to breathe the air of what seemed like a different atmosphere. The boardwalk was a carnival, with a resident pride of sea lions and a carousel, with mothers in sweaters corralling kids in trunks, the fathers in loafers ogling the teenage girls in two-piece swimsuits, and we ogled them too, though we were wrecks beside the native Cali boys, in their Hawaiian-style board shorts, with their six-pack abs and tanned skin the color of caramel. Two of us had mangy Midwestern beards. Two of us were stuck with tufts of adolescent scruff. Joey was wearing thrift store shorts and a t-shirt declaring, "You know you're old when the only thing that gets hard are your arteries." Tim had driven the entire 12-hour stretch from Salt Lake City, pounding through so much Mountain Dew Code Red his eyelids were twitching. For days, we'd eaten nothing but pan-fried onions, potatoes, and hot dogs, and Pat was the first to spot the free soup samples. Every restaurant had a vendor out front hawking some kind of cooked fish or crustacean. This one was giving away Dixie cups of clam chowder, which I'd also never had before. Having scrapped together $600 between the four of us to fund our trip out there and back again, we decided to invest in a bowl. Tim paid from our communal coffer, an envelope marked with $3 signs, which would later be stolen from a campground in Arizona while we were swimming. And we asked for 4 spoons. We stood shoulder to shoulder along the railing at the end of the pier, passing the chowder back and forth, the four of us enamored by a trio of pelicans on the pilings below. We stood, watching the water and the horizon anchored in the difference. And it was something. And then a little later we went for a swim.